Hi, I'm Melissa Khadivi. I go to St. Andrew's Episcopal School in Ridgeland, Mississippi, and this is going to be my third video for application to the USA debate team for International World Schools Debate. This is going to be a reply speech in the format of World Schools Debate, and it's going to be on the motion, this House believes that publishers have a moral obligation to refuse to distribute deeply offensive literature. Before I actually begin my arguments, I've been asked to start with a list of the 3 anticipated propositional and oppositional arguments before I start my speech, so here they are. On the propositional side, I anticipate that they will argue first for publisher agency and how publishers are not neutral couriers, but instead can have the ability to choose what ideas to amplify. Second, the prevention of real-world harm and how some literature spreads hatred and dehumanizes minorities and should thus be rejected. And third, that the refusal of publishing is not incompatible with free speech as a principle. On the oppositional side, I anticipate that they will argue first for the protection of the free spread of ideas in the publishing marketplace. Second, that the term deeply offensive is subjective. And finally, that agent responsibility exists, that readers and authors, not the publishers, are responsible for mitigating or listening to harmful information. But I'll go over all of these points in my actual speech. So again, this is going to be 4 minutes in length, and I've chosen the oppositional side in today's debate. Books society once considered deeply offensive, including writings on abolitionism, feminism, or class consciousness and the queer experience, are now held as beacons of thoughtful literature, as they should be. Free expression gives people the ability to challenge societal harms and shape a better world. But today, the proposition wants you to deny this ability to shape society. They want to give that power not to the masses, but to publishers. And they want to deny people their autonomy when it comes to freely engaging with literature. That is why we are proud to oppose. In today's speech, I'm going to go over the 4 main points of clash and explain why the opposition wins each one. First, the core of this whole debate is what counts as deeply offensive. The opposition brought this up in our first substantive argument, and we've told you that every other argument hinges on this. We've told you that deeply offensive doesn't have a set definition and can be manipulated by specific public agencies or agendas to push or suppress certain ideas. As aforementioned, ideas challenging slavery or the patriarchy were once considered deeply offensive, and the proposition's insistence that deeply offensive only means universal triggers of harm fails to take into account the historical context in which this phrase was used. Abolitionist pamphlets were seized from the mails in the 1830s for their offensive, shaking, or frightening opposition to state order. If the panel sides with the proposition in today's debate, they justify the same suppression of ideology, except instead of state seizures, writing will be cut off at the source in publishing houses. Their world risks suppressing the very ideas that drive societal progress. Second, opposition has told you in our second substantive argument that it's key to protect the free spread of ideas for publishers to distribute literature freely. The proposition argues in their third substantive argument that they simply believe that publishing houses don't have to publish everything. But this isn't about what publishing houses are allowed to do. It's about what they are morally obligated to do. The proposition places a constraint that publishers are morally obligated to not publish certain types of material. But this changes the publisher's role from a facilitator of public discourse to a suppressor of it. Proposition normalizes a culture where the safest and most ethical decision is to avoid controversial ideas altogether. Opposition instead preserves the publisher's role as a facilitator of discourse, which is the precondition for every societal movement they now celebrate. Third point of clash here is agent responsibility. The proposition has no response to the moral agency of adults. Even if some readers misuse literature, it's more dangerous to build a society around restricting everyone else's access than it is to trust individuals with the freedom they have to think critically. Proposition engages with this more dangerous society. And the fourth point of clash here is real-world outcomes. The proposition's first substantive argument is about preventing dehumanization or harm, but they have not proved that giving publishers a moral obligation to reject these works actually achieves that goal. Harmful ideas do not disappear when mainstream publishers reject them. They simply move to alternative platforms where they are allowed to compound without public scrutiny. Our side has shown that open distribution allows society to expose, criticize, and ultimately reject dangerous ideas rather than driving them underground where they are allowed to become even worse. Ultimately, the proposition offers the hope that suppressing offensive literature will suppress offensive ideas. We have shown that history and human behavior don't work that way. We won't lose dehumanization. We will lose every valuable idea that someone once found offensive, while truly harmful ideas continue to perpetuate in the private sphere. If there is a risk in our world, it is that people encounter politically dangerous ideas. If there is a risk in their world, it is that society never encounters the truly transformative ones. Between those two, the greater moral obligation is to preserve the free exchange of ideas, because we as a society can never address harm if we might be prevented from speaking on it. For those reasons, we are proud to oppose. Thank you.